Alright guys, thanks for clicking on this video. Before we start, I just want to remind you that I will be streaming Strinova on Twitch, so make sure you go and follow me over there. You can find the link in the description below, so you can get a lot of these tips in real time instead of waiting for me to get a video out. Alright, so jumping in, we have the beautiful Lawine character, or Lawine, I don't know how you say her name, I'm just unfamiliar with how they say things. But we're going to start off with the abilities. Now your Q is your active, which is Pulse Blade. This is where Lawine throws a pulse blade that creates an electromagnetic field, exposing nearby enemies to her team. The pulse blade will then vanish if there are no enemies that are detected, or after 3 scans. This is actually what makes up Lawine's primary role in the game, which in-game they label as Vanguard, where you gather intel and expose enemy plans and guide your team. However, if we go in more depth with this, it's actually into that role of info gatherers, where you need to find where people are and aren't. That is your main primary role. So if you're playing Lawine in games and you're not doing that, you're playing this character entirely wrong. That is the one reason why this character is a must pick, is because of how effective she is at info gathering, where you have to find where people are or aren't. You're taking space for the team, they know where people are, then you can enable your entry fraggers to go and get kills. So if you're not doing that, you're playing this character completely wrong from the get-go. Now, one thing you need to know about Lawine is that Lawine is also a attack-sided character only. You cannot play this character on defense, because she is part of the Scissors faction. So if you're thinking about picking up this character as a main, then just take note that you will need a main for the defense side. There are a few characters that will be available on both, but we'll talk about that when we get to their guides. The second ability for Lawine that you need to know is the ultimate, which is called Stealth Master. This is where you create a stealth zone and you'll become invisible when you enter it, but you can't actually fire when in the zone, so you kind of need to pass through the zone and then get to the back of enemies before you can finally shoot them. You just need to be a bit careful about when you pop out in case there's multiple enemies looking at you. The zone is just a big rectangle essentially, like that creates a corridor down the path you're looking at. So make sure you're not just throwing it at a wall, because then you're gonna have to come out the zone and then back into it. So if you've got like a little bit of a passage where you can still stay in it to get all the way through the corridor, you're pretty good at getting anywhere on sight. Now, another thing I want to mention about the ult quickly is that when you use your ultimate, the enemies can see exactly where that corridor is. So if you're playing in those higher ranks, they're probably going to guess that you're going to pop out at any moment. So you do need to be a bit careful of that. So you really want to use it when there's a lot going on, when the battlefield is very chaotic. Otherwise, they're just going to wait for you to pop out and then melt you straight away. As you can see in the clip, I was waiting for the enemy Lawine to try and flank my team. And the minute she popped out to go and actually help her team, that's when I flanked her and then killed her just to win the round. When you have the ultimate available, that's when you'll be actually taking a bit of a space taker's role, which is where you get on site, claim space, you gather info for your team, and allow your team to then follow up, obviously, because you're calling out where enemies are, and you can obviously pop out and surprise those enemies and clear space for your team. This makes Lawine very strong, as it is, even without the ult. Your primary role here is to use the Pulse Blade, so you can take space and find where people are or aren't. Once you've done that, if they aren't there, then you push the space, and your team then has control of the map. If they are there, then, well, you've got 5 people with you, hopefully, and you can easily go and push the map and then win that duel and make it an unfair advantage in a 5 versus 4. Lawine does feature a passive ability called Shadow Reveal, where enemies hit by your primary weapon are briefly exposed. So what this means is when you're shooting at an enemy and you don't kill them, you can then go behind cover and you can see where that enemy is through the wall perfectly for a good couple of seconds. This is only available to Lawine though, so you won't actually be able to see them as your teammates, but you will when you start unlocking perks in the String Energy network for Lawine. Now when it comes to Awakens, every match you're going to have a choice between Awaken 2 and Awaken 3. You can't have all 3 of the Awakens unlocked at once. You'll always have Awaken 1 regardless of what you're doing, but you'll have to pick between Awaken 2 and Awaken 3. So Awaken 1 here, you can see will unlock when we unlock a blue perk, which is firing, critical hits, accuracy, and capacity. So when we have one of those, combined with one of these yellow bits, which is Pulse Blade or Shadow Reveal, we will then unlock Awaken 1, which is Tranquil Gaze, where your attacks will reveal damaged enemies to her team. So essentially, how you highlight enemies like that before, that will then be effective for the whole team, which is just fantastic. Now, Awaken 2 is Binding Pulse. The Pulse Blade scan will slow enemies trying to escape the zone with an electromagnetic chain. So it kind of chains them in place and slows them. This is fantastic for when you're trying to enter a site. If you find someone being a bit too aggressive, your whole team can then chase them down for a very easy kill because they're trying to get away from you, but they just cannot because they've been slowed down by the Pulse Blade. Awaken 3 is called Stealth Recon, and this is where the Pulse Blade remains active and you'll rescan when enemies enter the range until the skill's duration ends. which is pretty good. I actually did like Awaken 3 over Awaken 2, but after playing with Lawine for a while, Awaken 2 and just having that ability to push with your team and get a free pick is actually fantastic. Awaken 2 is definitely the way I would go. In terms of actual gameplay and putting perks into things, you're not going to have enough points, energy points, to go for armor straight away. Armor is such a necessary tool that you need to survive because it ends up being shields, right? So if you look in the bottom left there, we have 45 shields and 100 health. If we buy light regen armor, you can see we now have 95. If we go for heavy armor, we now have 120. So you can see there that that's your shields, and it is super important to actually get armor as quick as possible. But in the first round, you're not going to have enough points, especially on attack. So what I would recommend is either going with a critical hit or firing. So if we're looking at firing and we want to pick between base damage and base fire rate, if we take a look at base damage here and we shoot this enemy in the chest, you can see that we used 32 bullets at the start, and to finally defeat this enemy, we needed a whopping 9 bullets. Now, if we go to base rate of fire, and we do the same thing, you can see here, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we needed another 9 bullets with base rate of fire, which is the exact same as base damage. So what's the point in taking base damage when we should go base rate of fire? Because if you're doing full sprays, the rate of fire is going to be quicker and you're going to get more bullets out. So therefore, base rate of fire is just the best way to go with that if you're picking that as your first thing. Then, once the first round is over, you want to refund your points from firing and instantly go for heavy armor. Why you want to do this is because you'll be able to afford the armor straight away instead of just keeping fire in round 2, because in round 1 you can't afford armor, but round 2 you can if you refund. Heavy armor will give you 120 armor on Lawine, which is absolutely fantastic. Sure, you can go with like light armor, which will then give you a bit of regen too from 0 to 6, but you're playing a game mode where you only have the 1 life. Unless you're a character that can engage and disengage in fights, having light armor is not the best option. Heavy armor, where you can actually stack 120 shield, is going to be the best way to go, because you might have to fight one person, then fight another. It just feels a lot better for survival, especially in these game modes where characters only have 1 life. So I would recommend going heavy armor first. Then another thing I like to do as well is quickly go for the awakenings straight after this. So I like to actually go for headshot damage over stringified damage. Enemies are a lot harder to hit when in stringified mode, but they will still take damage. But most people will just go into stringified mode and wait until you run out of ammo anyway. So there's no point in really taking stringified damage, because you can just go for headshot damage and you're going to be up close anyway when people are doing that and strafing. So the minute they pop out, that's when you just hit them in the head and you should probably win that fight. So we're going to go with critical hit here to get the Awaken 1 Tranquil Gaze. After that, I like to go for enemy exposure duration, just so it doesn't stop exposing enemies. So you can either go Shadow Reveal here or the enemy exposure duration up top on Pulse Blade. It really doesn't matter because you'll be unlocking both of those in the next 2 options anyway. Getting both of these as soon as possible with critical hit and armor, you will then see will unlock Awaken 1, which is Tranquil Gaze, where you can reveal damaged enemies to your team. And it will also unlock Awaken 2, which is the Binding Pulse, where if you see now we throw out our blade, anybody in there will be trapped and slowed, as you can see, which is just fantastic because it then lets your team run in and defeat them very easily. From there on, once you've unlocked your main points, which is Awakening 2 and Awakening 1, you're then going to start looking at how to improve your recoil, which is obviously recoil handling and accuracy. And then from there, you're going to want to go for, I personally like reload speed. I know some of you like magazine capacity. I would say this one's personal preference, but for me it's just reload speed, because I find that I like to reload quite a lot in battles, especially when I run out of bullets. I try not to reload when having still a good couple of bullets left in. I know a lot of people who play like Call of Duty and stuff will tell you that it's so easy to reload if you're missing 1 or 2 bullets. You don't need to reload then. You've got a mag, you can actually down enemies pretty easily. You don't need a full clip all the time, but when you run out in the middle of a fight, having that reload speed is going to be so much more beneficial, because you're going to get that mag back, especially since the time to kill in this game is so high. Then, of course, we've already spoken about the firing. You've got base damage and base rate of fire, and in the maths there, base rate of fire was just better. Then lastly, I like to take stringified movement speed, because I like to strafe left and right very quickly while in the stringified sidestep mode, so I can dodge bullets easier and have the enemies have a harder time hitting me. Obviously, you can go for a damage reduction if you are struggling to strafe, but most players now will be able to strafe a bit better and will actually be able to dodge bullets very efficiently. So if you are doing that, then you don't need the damage reduction. Get the movement speed to be harder to hit. So just another quick recap of this video. Your main role is to gather information using your Pulse Blade. You need to throw this out so you can scan for enemies, and if they are attached by the electromagnetic field, your team can then go in and quickly stop them getting out of the scan alive. So you can get easy picks for you and your team, which then allows you to take over bomb sites and pretty much win the game all round easily. If you do have your ult, you're then actually transitioning to the role of space taker once you start entering that site. Your job is then to get on site and claim space. You're going to be able to gather info since you're invisible, and you can allow your team to follow up once you pop out of one of the sides and start clearing out some of the enemies, especially if you use your Pulse Blade 2 to help your team like take control of one area, then you kind of go invisible and clear out the other. This is especially really helpful, and honestly does make Lawine a must-pick character for that attacking side. Now, when it comes to grenades, I personally love a good frag grenade and a good smoke grenade, because like I say, Lawine's playing that role of info gathering. Now, you can actually throw a smoke bomb at any entrance, and then you can actually scan that smoke, and you can see enemies through the smoke. No problem, they won't be able to see you, but you'll be able to see them, and that causes an issue for them, and it's not very safe for them to play behind smokes at all. They need to kind of back off, which allows you to then take space, and you're doing your role so perfectly. The frag grenade is obviously just a frag grenade. You can kill downed enemies very quickly when you throw a frag grenade in that general direction when they're trying to get revived. And you can also clear out space if you know an enemy's hiding behind a wall and you've scanned them. You just chuck a frag grenade in there with one of your teammates and problem solved. They need to either push back very quickly or they're going to get downed. But that's it for my Lawine guide, guys. I hope you had a good time watching this video. Any feedback on this type of video would be appreciated, since this is my first character guide. If there's anything you think I missed, then please let me know in the comment section below. And I'll also see you guys on Twitch. You can find the link in the description of this video below, so I'll see you there. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.